So back on this weird jungle asteroid, the the weird lady is like smelling them and stuff. She's being creepy. So she's gonna be evil probably, right?
Welcome to ScapeChatz episode 11. I'm Alan and I'm here with Magellan yet again. This week we're going to be discussing Season 1, Episode 21 of Farscape, Bone to be Wild, and Season 1, Episode 22, Family Ties, which is the Season 1 finale. First up is Bone to be Wild, which was written by David Kemper and Rockne S. O'Bannon, and it was directed by Andrew Prouse, originally airing on January 21st, 2000 in the United States. John, what did you think of Bone to be Wild?
First of all, let me just say that was smooth as silk, sir.
Whew! I'm sweating.
Take a breath.
For those at home, I am trying to make my intros good, and so that was prepared as hell, if you couldn't tell.
Man. With regards to this episode, Bone to be Wild, I thought I was going to like it less than I ended up liking it, but that's partly because the episode took some key turns, and several of them throughout, that changed my opinion of it as it went along. So ultimately, I thought it was fun, but it was oddly placed in the arc of the whole season.
Yeah, it's so weird for them to put the second to last episode of a season that's been filled with plot development and character progression, and then just have this episode that I guess I described to you as feeling like a Fallout side quest.
Right.
Because it's just it's a setup, and then it's a 3-act structure. It's a setup, it's a conflict, and it's a resolution. That's really all there is to the episode. But there is actually some interesting development in terms of like world building that I really liked in this episode. So how did it start, John? Where do we begin?
So we begin aboard Moya, as we so often do, but this time around things are a little different. It's cold in there. Everybody's shivering and under blankets and whatnot.
You can tell it's cold because everyone's wearing black.
Yeah,
and the lights are dark.
Yes, and the lights are down, and Ben Browder's showing a lot of his teeth.
His perfect teeth. Yeah, that bastard.
He's got great teeth. And it's cold because they had to turn off the heat because they're hiding in was it an asteroid belt of some kind?
Yes.
From Crace and Scorpius and the rest of the Peacekeepers. And there's some dialogue traded back and forth, people complaining about how cold it is. Turns out Zahn is not affected by it, so that's another random fact about Delvians that we can kind of squirrel away and probably never see again.
Probably.
Yeah. Then they get a distress call from a character who's going to become more important to this episode as it progresses. I don't remember her name. Oh, I do remember her name. It sounds like Emily, but it's not.
Yeah, both of the names that were introduced in this episode sound like real names, but they're not.
I think it's just Emily. Right?
Yeah, it's the Game of Thrones trick. You put apostrophes and more E's.
Yeah.
And then you have a fantasy name.
And she's like a weird green lady. And she's
with some crazy oh no, Emily's the small one?
Yes.
Emily's the one with the weird ears?
Yes.
Yeah, she's awesome.
And she's apparently under attack, and she's presumably with a group of other like-minded creatures who have all been killed by some monster. And so she calls their ship asking for help. And that brought up a couple questions for me. Number one, I guess maybe I didn't pay attention to this. Does she call them directly, or is it just a blanket distress call?
I believe it says it's a distress call.
It's just a blanket thing. Okay.
Yes.
Because, all right, never mind. That's not a big issue. And then the other question is something that this kind of brings up for us when we're thinking about the characters in this show is, do they feel a moral obligation to help people in need?
I think so. Someone calls you, or if you're on a ship, and you get like a radio message that's like, we're under attack, and you have the capability to help, like, why would you not?
Well, sure. That's kind of a very TV way of thinking about it, right? Like on any other show, you can presume that the main cast, if they get a distress call, is going to have the argument of, we have to go help because we're obligated to do so. That's very Star Trek. That's very pretty much any ensemble show where people are heroes. But I don't know that that's the nature of this show. And so they go into trying to justify why they would go help her, which I thought was a little thin. But they say that she probably has maps or something of the asteroid belt. Is that their reasoning?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Which maps always seem to be a big deal in this universe, which I find refreshing, I guess, because usually space shows, they just have a big old map of everywhere, and it's not an issue of getting from one place to another. But when you think about it, space is big, and you would need quite a few maps to get through it. So
there's a lot of talk about space being big in both of these episodes, and this idea that like it teaches us something about Moya in a way that like, oh, she isn't programmed with a full galaxy map, because she is just in the grand scheme of peacekeeper ships, like was a pretty low on the ladder kind of ship. So it makes sense that she wouldn't have all these maps programmed into her.
Right.
And again, since it's a show about communication and about finding where you belong, it's kind of symbolically resonant.
Yeah,
symbolically resonant.
And also,
they are looking for maps.
It reinforces the ragtag nature of these characters, that they're kind of operating on the fringe and they don't even know where they're going or where they are. But I still found that justification a little shaky, that they would just be like, oh, maybe she's got a map. Let's risk our position and go help. But that's, yeah.
Alas,
that's how that episode begins. And then the teaser ends with a very fun dialogue exchange between Chiana and Crichton, where Chiana says, "A distress call directed at us," and then Ben Browder, in his shivering, scary laugh, says, "How stupid is that?" And then it ends.
I like your Ben Browder impression a lot.
It's just, you kind of push a lot of lines through your incisors. That's how you do it. But yeah, so that was the teaser. I spent a lot of time on it because I liked it more than a lot of teasers we've seen before. Just because it was kind of it was a different mood and tone than we usually see, because usually they drop us right into like we talked about this last time, somebody's being crazy. Why are they being crazy? Let's find out.
Well, this kind of intro makes more sense for the show, because instead of someone on the crew being crazy, it's like, oh, we got a call.
Yeah. So then...
And also, it's good that you spent time on... Sorry. It's good that you spent time on the intro, because not a lot that's like conversation worthy happens like plot-wise in this episode. It moves very fast.
Right. So then we jump back in after the title credits to a scene between Crace and Scorpius, and they're hanging out in Crace's his quarters on his ship.
I love these scenes.
Yeah, I think we can just talk about these scenes in bulk, because I don't remember when the plots swap back and forth, and they are pretty separate from each other, so we can kind of talk about them separately.
Well, yeah, and so these series of conversations between them are basically just a lot of mind games, where Scorpius is kind of sizing up Crace as a threat, or as a non-threat, as we kind of discover, and him negging Crace, and also just making him feel really bad about himself and about everything, until Scorpius is essentially like, yeah, I could probably take over. Like, I might. Just, I want you to be scared of that, and I probably will.
Right.
So,
and I want to clear something up. I misunderstood Scorpius's rank or position last time.
Yes.
Or a couple times ago. I guess it was last time. I assumed that Scorpius was the boss of everybody, just because what I knew of Farscape, and his the first sentence on his page on the Farscape Encyclopedia Project says that he's the commander of the peacekeeping forces, which I think is something that either commander is not necessarily a rank that's as auspicious as it would seem, or that's something that happens later.
Right, that would make more sense.
So he is just the boss of a weird kind of out of the way side thing that the Peacekeepers do, the Gamek base and the wormhole stuff. So he's not Krace's boss, which I thought he was.
I can't tell if that makes me like his actions in the previous episode more or less.
I think it makes the previous episode less interesting, but it makes this one more interesting.
That's a good point. And the next one.
Yeah. Because what I liked about that assumption that he was Krace's boss in the last couple episodes is that it reinforced his patience, because he could have easily whipped out the "I'm your boss" card right away.
Right.
But I think what makes it more interesting in this episode, him not being Krace's boss, is that he is at a disadvantage in this situation. He doesn't have any real authority on this ship, and yet by the end, he has completely taken over the whole thing.
He climbs that ladder in the span of a couple minutes, basically.
Without having to really attack anybody. I mean, he does get into an altercation with Krace later on, but he doesn't need to use physical violence to take over the ship at all. He just kind of has good ideas and then blackmails Krace a little bit. And it just shows how scary Scorpius is, because he can maneuver himself into positions of power pretty easily.
That's a good point that you mentioned about physicality, because I think off the top of my head, the only scene I can think of where Scorpius physically did something imposing or serious was like a really big sort of emotional scene. It's basically the end of this episode. Is where I was like, whoa, that's a weird moment. But
so this first Scorpius Krace scene ends on a pretty interesting note, where Scorpius kind of just butts into Krace's quarters, and he's like, Krace, if I were the boss here, what I would do is I would capture Moya's baby and then kind of hold it hostage to draw them out. Isn't that a good idea? And then
Isn't it?
And then Krace is like, no, I'm gonna do my own thing right now. And Scorpius just kind of, his feelings are a little hurt. He's like, but I had a good idea. It's
good. I finally did something.
It's objectively a good idea. So that was a nice note for that scene to end on. Then, let's see.
Agreed.
When we return to them, Scorpius returns to the room, and he's kind of talking a big talk, I think. I don't remember if by this point he had been causing discord on the bridge and giving different orders than Krace was giving, but that happens.
Oh yeah, that was great.
That happens at some point. Yeah. I loved when he was mocking Krace's trophies, the heads of the Hynerians that he has on his pillars.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of like, why? I don't remember how he phrases it, but he basically mocks the idea of that warrior mentality of keeping mementos of your battles and your conquests, because it's just kind of, you're living in the past, essentially.
Right, it's just unnecessary showboating.
Yeah.
And I like that those Hynerian, because I'm unclear if these two episodes were aired. They weren't aired the same day. They were aired a week apart.
Yeah.
But that is a nice little continuity tie-in between the two of them, is the Hynerian heads, which come back in a nice way in the second episode.
So then we go, the next scene between the two of them, I don't remember exactly how it happens, but Scorpius is, what is he? I wrote that he uses memories as leverage rather than his authority.
Ooh.
But I don't remember that.
Is this the scene where he's eating or no?
No, I don't think so.
I like that scene.
Anyway, I don't remember that part. But then there's the other big scene is the scene where they fight each other. I think that's the
they get into a physical altercation.
Important thing, because it reveals something about Scorpius that we haven't seen before, which is that he's, first of all, extremely physically powerful, stronger than Sebastian,
but without trying,
right?
Which is cool.
And he gets into a rage sometimes.
Yes. Oh, I remember that. I thought that was crazy. And you were telling me, that was one of the best scenes of the episode or something.
Yeah, I think the Scorpius Krace stuff is the most consistently interesting stuff of the episode.
Oh, for
Although
sure.
that being said, I'm not remembering any of it really well. because I think it's all just sort of, it's one note, not in a bad way. It's a good note, but they just keep kind of returning to the same note over and over. And throughout the whole episode, the arc is that Scorpius is going to get the upper hand, and Grace is going to continue to fall from grace.
Grace is going to fall from grace?
Yeah, I thought we could move past it, but we don't have to. Sorry.
It's just those things are almost Shakespearean, because it's just a lot of like dramatic irony and
right.
Picking at someone's flaws and all that good stuff. So that's really, you can summarize that.
Yeah. And Scorpius has like a cool deep voice sometimes.
Yes.
Which is cool. And he ends that scene with a great line. He says, if you were to fight anyone, attack your executioner. So.
Oh yeah, that's
take that, Grace.
That's one hell of a line.
All right, so there's that stuff. Let's do the, I guess, the main plot here, and kind of tying in another one of the side plots, which is also more interesting than the main plot, but also one note. But we'll get to it. So the main plot starts with them landing on the asteroid from which they've received a distress call. And it's covered in a jungle for some reason, which bothered me.
What is the planet?
They're on an asteroid, but it's covered with vegetation.
That is weird.
Well, they say later that it was set up as... Basically, it's like a greenhouse.
Right. There's a lot of... Yeah, it's a like place of testing.
It was terraformed and all that, but they don't tell you that right off the bat, so it's just kind of a random jungle rock.
A lot of it reminded me of the episode where Dargo, Aaron, and Crichton were... It's the one where Roger gets kidnapped. And they're on the ground, and they're on that like weird, cool green planet. So I think they might be reusing away team sets. Or I'm just noticing similarities.
Gotcha. So they're just kind of walking around. There's some talk of them having space allergies, which is cute. And then they meet Emily, which, by the way, is spelled M''Lee. So
yeah, you have to.
It's not even. There's not even a vowel in that first part. But anyway, that's space spelling for you. And this is this character is played by Ben Browder's wife.
Ah, okay. I was wondering which one it was.
Plays a character in every season, a different character in every season.
They do have some cute staring at each other moments, which kind of I might make the thumbnail of this episode.
Yeah, the thumbnail for this episode is a bit misleading because they are passionately staring at one another,
and that doesn't go anywhere in the actual episode.
Then she's kind of panicked, and then they get attacked by a monster of some kind. What's going on there? Dargo gets hurt, which makes his voice deeper for some reason.
It does, yep.
And then he's bleeding internally, which how does that work with the blood running clear concept?
I think the idea is if you notice where the internal bleeding is, then you have to pierce it and let it out.
Okay.
So if it just cycles internally, then it does the same thing it does to humans, which is it kills you.
Gotcha.
How? I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Let alone a Luxon doctor.
Yeah. Can we get to my favorite thing?
What's your favorite thing?
That we learn about Zahn.
Oh, we get there eventually. It's not in the scene, but we're getting there.
Okay, yeah.
I just want to cut back to Moya real quick. To set up the other big plot of this episode, which is Pilot asks Aaron to stay back because he trusts her more than anyone else. And the pilot...
That's a nice scene.
The Pilot-Aaron relationship is possibly my favorite relationship between two characters on this show. Just the slow building of mutual respect between the two of them really appeals to me.
Well, they both fill each other's niches, and they both, so because she's physically capable but has problems with being in control of things, and he's all about control and guidance, but he doesn't have the physical prowess.
Right, and I think they're also the two characters that are the most bound to this ship as their home. Pilot, physically is part of the ship, but Aaron, whereas everybody else has a home that they can go to, theoretically, and a home that they're trying to get to. Aaron does not, and so Moya is sort of where she lives.
Which gets developed in a really nice way in both of these episodes.
Yeah, so Pilot trusts her, so much so that he lets her in on the fact that Moya's child is being a little rebellious, I suppose.
Sassy kid,
and they're not... I don't remember exactly how they phrased the problem, but just he's not listening to her or something.
Yeah.
And he might reveal their position. So Aaron goes over to board the new ship, and I wrote the note that I wrote when she enters is so this is my place. That's the bathroom. That's the living room. That's every single red light bulb I could find at the Lowe's. They put a lot of red lights in this ship to let you know that it's fierce or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a pulsating button that she presses, and we find out that this ship, a couple things that are different about it. Number one, it's mixed with like Peacekeeper warship control technology, so it's a sort of hybrid technological being. It can understand Aaron just directly and respond to her directly. And it doesn't have a pilot. It's just the ship itself.
Is it going to develop a pilot eventually, or is it just meant to be like controlled by...
I think the idea... Crace talks about this in the second episode a little bit, but the idea is that...
That's a fun noise.
Yeah, it's a fun noise. The idea is that not having a pilot makes it easier to have direct control over the ship's actions, because the pilot's an interpretive step between the people piloting the ship and the ship itself.
I see.
So that's cool. We get this look into the nature of this new ship, and it seems a little more dangerous, but also Aaron is developing this almost matronly relationship with it. And they're both sort of weird cast-offs from Peacekeeper society. So in that sense, she's finding a link to her old life and just more reason for her to stay with Moya and find a home in that situation. And I hear two questions. The first of them is my translator micro question of the week. For the episode,
it's been a while.
Which is, can the ship only understand Sebation?
Oh.
Or does it understand all languages?
Because both people that try to... Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
And it is a Peacekeeper thing. So I don't know. My guess is that they won't address that and that everybody will be able to talk to it, but I think it would be cool if it could only understand Sebation.
Right.
An interesting development.
It'd give Aaron something else to do, too.
Yeah. Here's another observation that I don't know why I haven't had until now. You'd think that Aaron's son, she's a soldier, right?
Sure.
She has very long hair for a soldier, right?
Yes.
I feel like that would get in the way in like fights and stuff. Like they would make her cut that.
I thought a lot about her hair in the second episode and in this one. She just went like her hair has gone progressively more straight as the season's gone on, which leads me to my question of the week, which is where, how, why, how is she straightening her hair on this ship? What technology do they have that lets them do that? And also, question 2: how do they poop? These are the things I think about.
I'm sure they've got a room for that.
They need to show it. They need a whole episode where like John Crane gets shrunk down to the size of a piece of toilet paper. And him and Chiana have to ride it down the sewer holes, and they almost get shot out into space. And then Dargo's got the runs.
God. He's got the Luxon runs.
Yeah, oh no. I've got the Luxon rage. Let's stop. Let's back out of this tailspin that we're finding
and
ourselves in.
Zahn has to create a medical cure for it, of course.
And so the time is running out, and Rigel just can't stop eating, so... I think it's a testament to how...
The end of the episode is Rigel pushes Dargo aside, and he's the one who uses... He farts his helium farts, and that's the joke end of the episode.
There you go.
We did it. Yeah, so were you about to say something?
I was about to say that it's just a testament to how well defined these characters are that we can make an episode like that, improv style.
Right.
Seriously.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with that. So back on this weird jungle asteroid, the weird lady is like smelling them and stuff. She's being creepy. So she's going to be evil probably, right?
Aren't her weird like hologram, or not hologram, or like LED headphones?
Yeah. And this is when we get the revelation that you wanted to talk about what Zahn is exactly. So do you want to say what it is?
Well, okay. There's a lot of talk about plants in this episode, and flora and fauna. And at some point, it's Emily and Dargo and Crichton and Zahn are talking about, I don't know, photosynthesis and stuff, and people being plants. And then Zahn just kind of lets it slip, like, oh, like I'm a plant. And Dargo's like, yeah, cool, like I know that. And then just Crichton immediately gets to be the viewer responsive, like, what do you? I'm sorry?
Yeah.
You person, plant? And she's like, yeah, it's not weird. Like, you remember when I was like way into those lights earlier? Yeah, photosynthesis, dude. Cool. Anyways, it's kind of like the Luxon Blade thing from last week, where it's like they just kind of say it, but it has a little bit more, it calls back in this episode a little bit more than that.
Well, the beauty of this moment is that it just reminds you that you're in an alien world, because as a viewer, I think you can kind of get to a point where, okay, I'm 20 episodes in, I'm not going to learn anything about these characters that's going to shock me in terms of like what they are. I might learn some things about their pasts or them as characters, but you stop seeing the sort of sci-fi surface of it and start engaging with them as characters that you would see in any other story. And so this moment really refreshes the idea of, oh, well, it turns out that anything could be new, and you could learn a new thing every day about this world.
I think this is the type of show that would drop something again like this on us in like season 4. Be like, by the way, Chiana is a hermaphrodite. Anyways.
Right. And it's not something, it's the kind of revelation that doesn't need to have an immediate conflict associated with it.
Yeah.
But you can still have that moment of, I guess that doesn't make a difference, but it's weird.
But huh? Yeah, exactly. And in this episode, it really only comes back in terms of Zahn's motivations. It's less of like a big deal than it would seem. Anyways, moving right along.
Yeah. So how does Zahn survive in space? Exactly.
Damn it! I thought we were going to go somewhere.
I guess she doesn't have to photosynthesize that often, or does she? Because she eats food. I don't know. It's weird.
What was I watching recently where people always eat food, but they didn't need to eat?
Oh, that's a good... I feel like I know the answer, but I don't know.
Yeah, we like talked about something. It was some sci-fi thing. Was it a comic book?
No, was it when we were watching Buffy? Because vampires don't...
I feel like it was more recent.
It's more recent.
If I think about it, I'll mention it.
About it. So then they get attacked by the monster thing again, which is cool. And John and Emily are able to run away, but Zahn hangs back. Or she was separate from them, something like that.
Yeah.
And turns out she has chameleon powers, too. It's just...
That one's actually like real. That could be really useful.
Yeah.
And it is useful here.
Zahn, hey, could you have used your invisibility powers in any other episode? That would have been super helpful for all of us.
If she can also use them while moving, then why didn't she go onto the Peacekeeper ship last week?
Yes, that's my question.
Because that's basically invisibility. If you're just like see through and you can blend into the shapes. Here it's cool though because it's like, oh, the monster's chasing me, cloak time, and then she just kind of blends into like a tree. She kind of Homer Simpsons into the tree or whatever, or into the bushes.
Right. But then she still gets caught, doesn't she?
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
It's not perfect.
The monster looks dumb. We're just going to throw that out.
It does.
There.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Sort of. I mean, it's just a big person with leaves on them.
Yes, it's exactly that. Yes.
So then John and Emily are back in the pod that they landed on the planet in. Dargo's getting upset because he thinks that they left Zahn for dead.
They wouldn't do that.
Well, they thought they did. They thought that Zahn was dead at this point.
R.I.P.
A fun line from John. He says, "It was instinct, Dargo. You understand instinct? It's what everything you do is based on." So that's good. I wrote these characters assume each other dead a lot, which is true. They're
always like, "Oh well, I guess we'll move on from that." And it's like, "Oh my god,
like
are you kidding me?"
Every other episode, they're like, "Well, Aaron's dead. I guess we'll just keep on living."
Anyways,
yeah. Then John goes out in the wilderness again because he realizes that, for some reason, that Zahn isn't dead. Like maybe the thing takes a while to eat people or something. I don't know. There's some piece of information. He's like, oh, maybe Zahn's not dead. So he runs out into the jungle to find her, gets attacked by the thing, and then is about to get attacked by this girl alien who, oh, what? We thought she was nice. She's a monster who eats people's bones? That's crazy. Oh, no. And of course, the thing we thought was the monster is like, I'm not your enemy, she is. I didn't like that revelation.
Well, I didn't like that, and that's where this is, honestly, I was telling John before we recorded, like, this is around the point in the episode where I was kind of dozing off.
Yeah.
This episode kind of flits around with really easy tropes for a while, and it's just like, oh, the chase scene, and oh, everyone's fine, oh, we thought we were dead, bad guy's the good guy's the bad guy, but then it kind of does it again, which I appreciate.
Right. So there's a point for some reason where we get a very, very close shot of Pilot's eyes.
Is there?
Yeah. I think it's just another scene on Moya's child with Aaron being like, calm down, baby ship. We don't want to.
Oh, it might have been just like a intimate, not an intimate, but like a personal moment with Pilot.
Yeah, he was like concerned about something. But it was just a very cool shot because you only see his eyes, but they're so expressive. It cycles through like 3 or 4 emotions with just those puppet eyes.
It's all in the eyelashes, I feel like.
In the brows,
yeah.
Yeah. Back on the asteroid, John is now in the weird science lab of the monster, hanging with the monster and Zahn. Does the monster have a name, is my question.
The monster?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
What's its name? Bernie?
It's Bernie.
Oh my gosh.
Bernie, spelled B-R'_N-E-E. Bernie.
Alright, guys. Go home.
Alright, Farscape.
I don't know. Emily and Bernie. I want to get out. It's 5 o'clock.
We've been writing for hours. Rock me, please. Get to work.
And he has a cool laser that can make plants. Or the way he does it is he makes plants miniaturized. And then he can put them in the laser thing and they reconstitute the plants. Bigger.
That was one of my favorite touches in this episode, was the shrink gun.
Yeah, it was very cool. Very cool concept. There's a point where John is threatening Bernie for some reason. Like,
yep.
Oh, it's they're going out to chase Emily, and he's like, if you get Zahn hurt or whatever, I'm gonna kill you. And then he says, capiche? And I picture any other character would have been like, Crichton, what are you saying? But this guy kind of shrugs it off. Like, that word,
well, that's a word.
I don't know what that word meant, so we're just going to move on.
I had the exact same thought, actually, now that I remember that.
So then what we find out when John confronts her again is that, so what we learn from Bernie is that he is the last member of a scientific team. Basically, his people planted a lot of plants on this asteroid, and then they came back years later to collect them, and Emily was there, and she ate all of their bones. And that's her thing, is she eats bones. It's important for the plot, specifically that she needs calcium.
And the title of the episode.
Right. Also the title.
Essential.
Yeah. Then what she reveals as some additional information is that she was sent by Bernie's people, she and like her own people, were sent to this asteroid to eat the herbivores that were there.
Right.
But then they were abandoned on this asteroid, and they had run out of animals to eat, so they ate each other. And she's the only one left.
She's hungry, man.
Yeah, which I think that's pretty cool.
It's the thing that you get as a benefit of having away team episodes in shows like this, is that you can have a character be like, oh, and I killed everyone I know and ever knew, or I was like the last person standing out of a whole society, because that lets you write around having too many characters, and it also lets you add stakes to a story that otherwise is featuring like 5 characters total on this
planet. So then John is kind of sympathetic to her because he
also ate his entire planet and all the people on it.
It's kind of hard sometimes to pin down John Crichton's moral compass. I think he's just like very all-American. What is the quote right thing to do? In this episode, it's kind of hard to figure out what the right thing is, because on the one hand, you've got a crazy botanist who is like trying to, I don't know, murder lots of animals to get his plants. On the other hand, you have a bone-eating monster who just wants to eat bones.
Bones.
But anyway, they have an argument in the pod where John is like, oh, these stupid, just these dumb plants, like it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. And then Zahn has a great line where she says, how animal-centric of you, John.
Yeah, so these are the moments where I'm like, oh, Zahn being a plant is awesome, because he says that here, and then later in the episode, he's like, oh, we got rid of them. Oh, whatever, they're just a bunch of dumb plants. And she's like, yep, hi, dumb plant right here. What's up? How you doing?
But it's a class of microaggressions that you would never expect you'd have to deal with.
Kinda, yeah.
Just insulting plants. I wrote smart thinking Dargo. Don't know why. Apparently he thought of something smart, though.
Approach it for...
Oh, I know what it was.
Sorry,
what it was.
What was it?
Emily approaches him separately. And she's like, I'm trying really hard not to eat bones, but I need to eat these bones. And he's like, hey, here, I don't have any bones for you except my bones. And I need those. But.
For boning, naturally.
Yes. But very soon, there's going to be a lot of other dudes that are going to land here, and you can eat all of their bones.
Freebies!
And she's like, oh, that sounds great.
KFC marathon.
And he's talking, of course, about the peacekeepers who are chasing them. So that's smart thinking. Just unleash a bone-eating monster on your enemies.
Oh, what if they remade the KFC commercial?
I ate the bones.
I ate the bones! With Emily, and she's just like really happy, and everyone else is eating them and like choking and crying. She's like, yeah!
I ate the bones.
I ate the boner. Hey, go. Again, tailspin, go.
So then John goes back to the dude's lab, where he finds out that the dude shrunk Zahn so that he could keep
that was great. He put her in a jar.
Because he's like, she's such a cool, rare plant. They fight for a bit. John beats him up, I think, and just restrains him somehow. And then he uses the laser to reconstitute Zahn. So we've got Chekhov's plant contraption right there. I wrote, only in Farscape would the villain be a proud botanist. It's just something.
Totally. That's a good point.
And then fucking really dark part of the episode. Where
I was freaked out.
Where Emily comes back and she's like, I really gotta eat bones. And he's like, well, Bernie's over there. You eat his bones.
She's like, sweet. And they
watch her eat his bones.
They watch and there's sounds. You hear all of it. Then, it's so fun.
And then Zahn says, there is much cruelty in the universe. It's like, holy shit.
Is there really?
Just walk away, guys.
Yeah. Oh my god, that scene.
One other straight thought from the Moya's Child stuff that I forgot to mention. Yep. Just cool little bit of performance on Claudia Black's part, and maybe this was from the director as well, but Aaron is always touching the interior of the ship. I don't know if you noticed that.
No.
What do you mean?
Maybe in this episode.
Yeah. What do you mean, no? What do you...
Are you saying like she's constantly touching something, other like not just like standing still, not touching anything?
Yeah. Is that not true?
Okay. No, you're right.
Okay. It's just she always has a reassuring hand on some part of the interior of the ship.
That's that relationship. That's that physical contact. My Aaron Moya fanfiction is a...
No, not Moya. Moya's kid.
Okay.
Well, that's a big difference. They're different things.
Whatever you say, man. If you think so, then that's
right.
fine.
This episode continues the tradition of episodes ending with cool chats, except there's like 3 cool chats happening at once.
Yeah, we got a triple.
Rigel and Shiana are talking about something. Who knows? Who cares? They're joking, I guess.
Yep.
It's revealed that Aaron gets to name the ship.
Oh! Moya's child. What's she gonna name it?
Find out later.
Steve.
And then the very end of the episode is Scorpius's team.
Yeah, this is the scene.
Going into the science lab, and he finds Emily there, and she's like, "Please, I need help. I'm a scared alien lady."
She's basically playing the whole game with them again.
Yeah, and then the soldiers are like, well, "Let's kill her. She's crazy." And Scorpius is like, "No. Sometimes we have to be compassionate." And she kind of nuzzles up to him, and that's the end of the episode.
Well, it's a couple of things. I kind of wish we had the exact line, the stuff that he says there at the end, but he's basically saying, like, yeah, you don't always win all your fights by pushing people away. Like, sometimes you just gotta let them right in. And it's this, like, a weird moment of, like, close physical contact where he's essentially, like, she's hugging him. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of horror movie-ish, but it's pretty subtle. She turns her head and looks at the camera, and her eyes turn red again. And you're like, wait a minute. Is this suggesting that she's going to eat Scorpius? Because that's wrong. Like, that doesn't work.
That's the thing. That's what made that ending weird for me. Because it's like, well, you're not going to eat Scorpius, and the next episode is not going to be about you eating all of his men. Because it's very clear that you are a one-off character, and he is a main character.
Yes.
Which is unfortunate, because that would have been a cool development to the plot. And even in the next episode, they make some dumb offhanded joke about, like, oh, I've got this new, like, cool alien friend. By the way, have you seen the guard that was supposed to be watching her? He disappeared. Well,
what?
Well, never mind.
Anyways.
Move on.
Question.
Yeah.
In terms of where are these characters have been introduced and dropped? Where's what's his name? Slade? Jackson? Carl? The guy that was Metalhead. Stark. Where's Stark? He's not in any of these episodes.
He is gone. They were originally going to... One of the background information bits here...
Thank you for transitioning. I appreciate it.
There was a line that originally explained where he had gone, but the line was cut, and they don't explain where he went until he returns.
But isn't he on the ship?
No. Well, they explain later. He doesn't.
He went.
He doesn't show back up again until season 2, episode 16.
Jeez.
So, and also Scorpius is gone for a while, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, like I don't think he shows back up until the end of season 2.
Oh, that's a bummer. Wait, that could be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Anyway, the background information. As I said, Emily was played by Francesca Buller, I don't know, Buller, something like that.
Yeah, keep guessing.
And she played a different character in each of Farscape's 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Apparently the last 4 episodes of the season were scored as a single block, as a single piece of music.
Yes. So, okay. That's interesting because if you are like me and you pay way too much attention to stuff like cinematography and music, then you pick up on that. And since we watch these in fairly close proximity, because let's just give a little background information, we're kind of shotgunning episodes right now. Like, we are doing them like once every, or 2 every like week or so. But sometimes it's like, oh, I technically watched 4 in the last 2 days because of the way that we record stuff. So I did notice that. But more specifically, there was that trivia that we had last week about how one of the songs in the soundtrack was from Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, mm-hmm. and how we thought that was really weird. And I did some research.
Oh, good.
And I discovered that song, which if I could find the name of it would be really useful, is... let's find the name of the song, because this is important. It's like the name of the like boss fight from that thing. Oh, Gulp's Overlook is the thing. Okay. From Spyro's Tripper's Age. That song is basically a royalty-free song that then has like Spyro beats laid on top of it. So what's actually happening is every TV show uses that beat. So if you go on to YouTube and you look up like Gulp's Overlook, everyone in the comments is like, oh, I know this from this, or I know this from that. But none of them know it from the same thing because it's in everything.
Interesting.
It's in a ton of things. So if you Alan, I guess you could just put a clip of that right here.
Yeah.
There you go. That clip, if you hear any of that in another TV show, then you'll know that that's one of those fun little trivia facts that you can be smart and know about.
Doing research.
Yeah,
that's
man.
Wonderful. My research is restricted specifically to the things that I'm told in these lists of facts, so I don't have to go very far to find out things like, for example, at one point Emily was going to make an appearance in the season 2 episode Won't Get Fooled Again, but then she didn't.
Oh.
Which doesn't mean anything to us because we don't know anything about that episode.
Yes.
As I said, there was originally a line explaining where Stark had gone, and we'll find out later by the time we forget that he even existed.
Yes.
This episode was nicknamed Monster Girl during production. So that's something, I suppose. That's kind of a better title than Bone to be Wild, honestly.
Absolutely.
This episode was...
Crayon says Bon Appetit at one point in this episode. There, I said it. They really had fun with their bone jokes.
At least he
didn't
podcast. Say it at the end when they were watching her eat.
Oh, yeah, that would have...
Bon Appetit. The director of this episode, Andrew Prowse, listed this as one of his favorites of the first season, which is crazy because this is the guy who directed Premiere, DNA Mad Scientist, and Rhapsody in Blue.
What are you doing, Andrew Prowse?
What are you doing?
Well, it's his favorite it's like in his top 4. So
right. But he said
question that
because
I
he
to ask
liked
you.
working with Francesca Buller. What's your question?
Yeah, I heard a lot of stuff from various interviews that she's fun to work with. I was going to ask you if you know if Andrew Prowse is related to... Is it David Prowse?
Yes, it is. I don't know.
Let's look into... I'm going to look into that. Research for next week. Yay!
Some of the cave scenes were filmed in a garage at the back of Fox Studios due to overcrowding on the studio floor. I guess that makes sense. Sure. Oh, this is cool. Emily's animatronics took 8 puppeteers to operate.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That doesn't really show.
No.
Which I think is good, because if it doesn't look like a puppet, then there you go.
Yeah, but it also... I guess there was a lot of like weird extra arms and stuff when she was in her beast form.
Yeah.
So... we did not talk about the fact that this was co-written by Rockneas O'Bannon and David Kemper, which you think would be a recipe for success, as it is in the second episode. But in this episode, it's just kind of like weird. You wouldn't expect that this show's showrunners were the ones who wrote this episode.
Or co-wrote it. They wrote it together. Yeah. I think that this is one of those episodes that the script got moved around a lot and played with a lot, so it doesn't really have a clear,
probably
like singular written writer's vision.
Mm-hmm. Here in the background information, every quote I read from Rockneas O'Bannon, I am slightly underwhelmed by, I guess, which is weird because I do love the show. I think he's doing a great job. But like his quote here, he's talking about, this episode we kind of wanted to do a twist on James Cameron's Aliens, flip it on its head, because in that movie, I don't know what
it's the poor helpless girl goes to...
you'd help the...
Yeah, don't try and describe Aliens, John. You haven't seen it.
No, I'm reading the quote, that's why.
Well, also, okay, so...
But their thing
quote,
is like, oh, an alien's like, you've got the little girl and you got to protect it from the big, ugly monster. What if we did an episode where the little girl is the monster?
Whoa. I think these quotations are being plucked from... It's called Farscape Chronicles.
Yeah, so it's a commentary, probably.
So I think that stuff is kind of like advertising. Like, he is, he's giving, like, clips. It's like interview clips of, like, oh, this episode's really wacky because of this. And it's not just, like, candid. I don't think these are candid opinions.
Oh, okay. I guess that
you know what
sense.
I mean?
Yeah.
I hope so. Or he's just a really, like, uninteresting opinion.
I like your current theory.
Yeah.
O'Bannon noted that the moment that affected him most emotionally from the first season was when Moya asked Aaron to name her baby.
Yep, well...
It's pretty sweet.
It's up there for me.
Zotozan's true nature is revealed in this episode that she is a plant, which, if it has been bothering you since... I don't even remember the episode anymore.
I was about to ask you, is this the thing?
Yeah, this is the thing that I was like, oh, that light means something. Where it's a spoiler about Zahn, but it's not a spoiler. I could just tell you. That's the thing. She's a plant.
I think that's a fun reveal in this episode, but it wasn't as big as a thing as I thought it would be.
Right. Gigi Edgley was added to the opening credits, so good for
her. Which I noticed. Rock on, girl.
Good for her. And then you already did all your research facts about this whole Gulp's Overlook thing, so I don't need to read that. Great. So that is Bone to be Wild.
A fairly forgettable episode with some interesting tiny bits in it that segued into
I think it turned
something
around towards that.
Totally. The inversion of the traditional like damsel role was pretty cool. Some of the effects were great, and it hinted at some interesting things about the characters.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, what's up?
Listen to me for a second.
I will.
Let me talk. I'm talking now. Can we discuss the next episode right after this quick break?
We sure can.
Thanks, man. And now it is time for the Moya Bag for episode 11 of ScapeChatz. The Moya Bag, if you haven't heard it before, which I don't know why you would have not, because we're on episode 11 at this point, and like, what are you doing starting in the middle? But to each their own, is a segment where I, Alan, and sometimes my co-host Magellan go back and read feedback from the previous episode's threads and emails, and we talk about them and kind of reflect on the episodes that we watched this week and last week. So we did not get a lot of comments on episode 10. That is partly my fault because I forgot to post this episode to the Farscape subreddit right when it went up last week, because it goes up at 9 a.m. on Thursdays, 9 a.m. Eastern specifically. And I didn't post it until late in the afternoon. So that early morning time is when we tend to get the most comments. But we did get 2. First one, this is again on the Farscape subreddit, Farscape, reddit.com/r/Farscape. And you can leave a comment there on the episode thread that I should be posting when these episodes go up. This first one is from Domain 101, who commented last week, and we talked about that one. Had I known you were going to read my entire comment, I would have been more brief, or at the very least, more eloquent. I do understand your desire to see all the characters as friends. Trust me, so do I. But I like that it had to be earned. Additionally, as much as I might love my friends, I don't know if I'd hang out with them indefinitely, instead of finding my son, or locating my homeworld, or retaking my throne. Being friends and having loyalties is a perfectly acceptable motivation, but I appreciate that it's not their only motivation either. Glad you guys are enjoying the show. I keep forgetting that you're a season ahead of the opinions I'm hearing. Keep up the great podcast. Thank you, Domain 101. That I replied in the thread. Basically, I said your comment was great. This issue is something that I flip-flop on a lot, and really, I just like that this show is bringing out discussions of sci-fi ensemble casts and why we tend to want our characters to do really well or to fail interestingly. Like, those are 2 distinct trains of thought that you can go back and forth on a lot, and I could talk about forever, but I think for this show it works that everybody's willing to leave each other in season 1, but once we reach season 2, it's like, yeah, we're a family at this point, especially after A Human Reaction, which was sort of the episode that, at least for John, solidified that maybe going back isn't the thing that he wants the most. So that is my sort of short form thoughts on that. Just a couple minutes ago, actually, or a couple hours ago, we got a comment from Frodo Fraggins, which is a pretty good username. I was a very casual viewer until I caught these episodes. These episodes plus the season 1 finale are probably the most nostalgic for me. I'd never get tired of watching them. Yeah, the back half of season 1 is amazing. Bone to be Wild and Family Ties are both really interesting. I just listened to most of the Bone to be Wild discussion today while editing, and it's weird that they, they did like a second to last episode of the season is a one-off, and then last episode of the season is a big setup for next season. Especially because we just got the 3-parter with, Nerve and The Hidden Memory and the other one. Oh, A Bug's Life. That's the one. Yes. I love how my brain works. I think I got that order wrong, though. But anyways. So those were the comments that we got on the Farscape subreddit. We didn't get any emails this week. So I'm just going to say that I'm really happy to have brought you guys all of Season 1 of ScapeChatz. And next week, we're going to mention this at the end of the episode, I believe, but we're doing the Season 1 recap, which is a good jumping on point for people who want to listen to the show or watch the show, and they don't have time to listen to all of our podcasts or watch all of the show. So we kind of go over all the plot beats, we talk about our favorite moments, our least favorite moments, and what the whole show seems to be about at this point. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be a fun one. And then the week after that, we start Season 2. In regards to Domain's comment about how we are still really far ahead, we've hit a recording snag. It's still like I think we've maybe recorded one episode since we started posting these to iTunes. So the gap between where the show is and where we are at is getting smaller and smaller every week. When it will stop getting smaller and when we will start moving forward again, God only knows. I don't need to do plugs this week, where we are on the internet. I think we mentioned our Twitters at the end at this point, and Fireside Friends is a podcast I do. Magellan does Stanford Improv Radio Hour. You know where to find those on the internet. And I'm going to just let you guys enjoy this discussion of Family Ties. Take it away, Alan and Magellan. Hey, we're back. Oh my god, we're discussing Family Ties. You guys. It's Season 1, Episode 22. And you want to know what? It was written by the two-man power hour, Rockne S. O'Bannon and David Kemper. And it was directed by Mr. T-Squad, Tony Tilsa. And it aired January 28th, a week later in 2000, in the U.S. It's ScapeChatz. Let's do this. Season 1 finale.
Tony Tilsa, in case we've forgotten, is one of the better directors, I guess, in Farscape. But he is a very house-style guy. He's directed PK Tech Girl, Till the Blood Runs Clear, Durga Returns, and A Bug's Life.
And Family Ties.
Well, yes, now and Family Ties. And then Rocky.
What did you think about Family Ties? I need to know.
It was fine.
What?
Just kidding. It was great.
Oh my god.
We talk a lot about Whedon's test, our genius concept that we've devised.
That we came up with and no one else did?
Right. This was a tour de force in Whedon's test theory. It outdoes any like Buffy or Angel episode, really, in terms of how many pairings it cycles through.
I almost think that they wrote this episode with the intent of just checking off every one of those boxes.
Right.
And I think we should mention this early on, because I can't hold it until background information. They didn't know, the writers of the show did not know that this would or would not be the series finale. They didn't know if they were going to get picked up for another season.
Which I think is a phenomenon you come across quite often in sort of cult dramas, especially, where you just don't have any gauge of like, are we going to come back or not? Because this show is on the Sci-Fi Channel, right?
Yeah.
So like, who's watching the Sci-Fi Channel? And even if you're doing well on the Sci-Fi Channel, are you doing well enough to get a second season?
And we know that they were, but watching the episode, you kind of get the feeling that like they kind of wanted to check off as many boxes as they could in case someone turned the lights off on them the next day.
Right. They didn't want to leave people without an ending.
Yes, and they did that. So this episode is all about setting that up, and it starts off really weirdly. That's my first note here, is like, wow, this is a weird way to push an episode into something interesting. Mm-hmm. So continuing from Bone to be Wild, Moya is still in that asteroid field, which we're just going to be in forever. But we just immediately jump in, and Rigel's like, guys, I'm going to Crisis ship. Bye.
So again, we're back to the typical Farscape pattern of, in the teaser, a character is acting out of character, and everyone's like, come on, why are you acting out of character?
And he's going to, like, supposedly give everyone up.
Right.
And for his own benefit, which almost makes sense, because I feel like out of everyone, Rigel has developed the least amount of empathy for his crewmates.
I would honestly disagree with that. Maybe the least absolute empathy, but I think he has traveled the farthest from where he started to where he was prior to this episode.
Interesting.
Which is why the beginning of this episode really bugged me. Because if Rigel was going to defect like this, he should have done it earlier. Like last episode, 2 episodes ago.
Ooh.
The fact that he's doing it now seems really odd. Like, it's just a risk. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And there's no reason for it to be like, oh, now's my chance. Okay, I'm going in. Bye, guys. Screw you all.
Yeah, because this kind of thing should be instigated by the situation escalating, by things getting more dangerous for them. But what we saw last episode is that they were just kind of sitting there and it wasn't a problem. You know? So that rubbed me the wrong way. But you need some kind of catalyst for this episode to happen, to force them into the situation where they have to take action. So I guess it works in that sense.
And we also learned with him going to the other ship, to Crisis ship in Scorpius's, which is slowly transitioning to Scorpius's command, that, like, this isn't going to work. This plan is terrible. And he kind of quickly realizes that, goes, no, wait, I'm sorry. Okay, back to Team Fart, back to Team Moya. So it's also just like a quick redemptive arc for him throughout this episode. He's been like, wait, if I had so basically if I'm trying to, like, defend Rigel's decision in this episode, it's like, oh, if I had the chance to just make things better and just, like, play to the side that's winning, why would I not take that? I mean, these are, like, my friends, but, like, we are eventually going to get caught by Scorpius and Christ. Yeah. So I might as well try.
Sure.
But then immediately it's like, nope, this is not going to work. I got to go. Screw you guys. Mm-hmm. Which is the callback that I was referring to earlier. It's basically he gets on the ship and he talks to Scorpius and Christ. And what do they talk? What is the gist of that conversation?
They're basically trying to figure out. They suspect him of being a spy of some kind, because they're pretty sure that, well, they're as baffled as we are of, like, why are you here? This is some kind of ruse,
right?
And he's like, oh, you want John Crichton, don't you? Well, I can get him for you, but you got to cooperate with me. So that's kind of what they're doing. And there's some cool power play dialogue going on between Crace and Scorpius there. It's just a cool setup of 3 characters to be talking to each other, because they all annoy each other in very specific ways.
Yes.
And Scorpius gets to be pretty intense. I think there's a sequence of shots that just keep getting closer and closer to his eyes, and every time it gets closer and you think that it's as close as it's going to get, but then it gets closer again.
I wrote here ultra tight Scorpio close-ups.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why I wrote Scorpio. But it's basically the last shot of that is just like his eyes are on both sides of the screen. It's as close. We're just in him, basically. Yeah. It's creepy. That relationship between the 3 of them, would you consider that a Skinner's, Chalmers, Simpson relationship? Because I kind of would. We got the sassy one, we got the one who's doing his best, and we got the one who's really in charge.
I think you nailed it.
I really, yeah.
I think you nailed it.
Oh. There's a couple.
Chris really is Principal Skinner.
Absolutely. He, like, thinks he's in charge, but then as soon as anyone above him is like, hey, you're weak and you don't know how to take control, he's like, oh, I guess I don't know. I'm sad. Which is kind of where a lot of the empathy for Grace comes from in this episode. Mm-hmm. So we'll be coming back to that. But there's a lot of sort of small dialogue moments in this episode that I really like, that we've already just kind of started moving towards and away from.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Well, there's a quick scene with Erin where she's like, on the ship with Dargo and Crichton, and they're all talking about plans, and they're both like, "Well, we gotta go fight and do crazy stuff." And then she's like, "God, I'm just surrounded by testosterone right now. This is weird." Which is weird because she's tougher than both of them.
Mm-hmm. So on the topic of cool dialogue moments, there's one that I had in that scene, but I wanted to hit a couple things before I get to it. A line I really liked when Rigel is on his way to sell them up the river is they're like, "Come on, Rigel, come back, we'll talk about this." And he says, "That's all you people ever do is talk." Which then they proceed to spend the rest of the episode just talking.
It's kind of irony. I like it.
I really liked the shot that scared Rigel, that showed that Rigel was afraid of his new situation, where he sees the Hynerian head on the column.
Yep, there's your call. That
looms over him.
Because he's in like the bathtub or something, right?
Yeah, I guess that happens later, but I had it. Oh no, I know what it was. That shot happens later, but there's a cool shot in the beginning where we're looking at the three of them talking, but over the shoulder of that severed head. And so it foretells Rigel being in danger in the situation without being as overt as when we see it looming over him later. Which is, in and of itself, a cool shot, but if you did that at the very beginning of the episode, it would be a bit much.
Agreed.
So there are cool little directorial touches going on here. I have 2 translator microbe things for this episode. I got 2 of them.
Ooh!
And they both have to do with Dargo and his language. The first one is when Rigel's on his way to the other ship, and Dargo's like, "Rigel?" And he says something in Luxon.
Oh, yeah. He says, "Oh, and by the way, you're something." It's like a whole sentence.
He swears in Luxon.
Essentially.
And then Chiana's like, "Well, that loosely meant that he's gonna do stuff to stuff." It's very funny.
Do stuff to your butt or something.
But it's like, guys,
how does that work?
How does it work? I guess the way you can think about it is that. So here's the justification for it that then leads to my second translator microbe question. And if people hate that I get hung up on this, I don't care because it's what I find most interesting.
Sure.
The way you can justify it is that maybe he's swearing in such a way that other languages don't have a word for it, because that happens with languages on Earth, where there are just swears. There are ways of swearing at people that don't exist in other languages.
They don't translate. Yeah,
you're the son of 1,000 whores, kind of thing, and maybe that exists in another language and it doesn't have a word in English, but it has a rough way of translating it. That kind of thing. But that leads me to my other question, which is in that scene with Aaron and John and Dargo that you talked about. They're talking about what their plans are, and they allude to the idea of their mission possibly leading to their death, or they talk about suicide directly. I don't remember, but they allude to the concept of suicide. And then Dargo's like, "We don't have a word for that in my language." And then John Crichton's like, "Do you mean suicide?" So I really wonder how that translated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's just whatever. That's more of a quibble. But that I find interesting. How does that work when they don't have, when another language doesn't have a word for something? How do the microbes handle that situation? Do they just hear John saying the word suicide because it's like not a word that translates, or do they translate the concept?
Well, it's also the capiche thing from last week, where it's this,
right?
Or our last episode, where it's a different language, but it's still Earth language. I don't know. Translator microbes are weird.
They are. That's the takeaway. But let's not dwell on that for too long. I wrote, "I love Scorpius," for some reason.
Naturally, which is great in general.
He can sense when people are lying. That comes back.
Me too. Sorry. It's bad jokes. that does come back, and that's a cool villain thing because it basically guarantees that his role will be the interrogator.
Yes,
of a sort. Always, whenever he's in a conversation, he has the upper hand because he has the trick to communication. And since so much of the show is about communication, one of his powers at least is that he knows when you're faking some type of communication or you're lying. In this case, interesting. I hope I'm wording that correctly, but it makes more sense in that show.
I wrote, they're all the family, because I guess they talk about being family with one another.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this episode about everyone being like, we're all friends, so we all love each other. Chiana doesn't wear no restraints, is the thing I wrote here.
Oh, that's right. Dargo tries to convince her to wear chains in case the peacekeepers come on board, so they think she's a prisoner. Yes. She does not like that.
And then we get a lot of scenes of people bonding, basically from here.
Yes. So we start with Aaron and Pilot.
Yes.
My fave. And they're hanging out in Pilot's place, right? They're in the Pilot area?
Yeah, Pilot Land.
Pilot Land. I feel like there's a name for that spot.
Like an in-universe name?
Yeah, but I don't know what it is.
Like the command deck or something?
Yeah, something like that. They're best buds, and he calls her Aaron. He calls her by her name.
Yeah.
Officer Son. Which had me tearing up a little bit. I wrote down that Pilot is a better actor than half the cast.
You always forget. I always forget that Lonnie Tupu plays Violet Christ and also Pilot in this episode.
They're diametrically opposed.
Exactly, and this episode had moments where I was like, wait a minute. You hear it in Christ. You never hear it in Pilot because Pilot has voice modification, but sometimes when Christ talks, if he speaks with a certain cadence, you're like, nope, that's exactly Pilot. He's not even... You put a little bit of voice effect on that and you have the same character. It's weird.
So they have their interaction, and it's mostly just about refreshing the idea of Moya's son, and Aaron gets to name it, that kind of thing. And
that's a good episode-long sort of suspense.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite things about the episode.
Then we cut to a scene where John is trying to record a message to his father, which is a semi-recurring motif. Yep. It happens about as often as in Twin Peaks, Cooper talking to Diane.
Yeah,
it happens a lot more at the beginning and then kind of trails off and then comes back at the end.
It kind of, that also just keeps drilling down this idea that we, and us being Team Moya, we don't know what to do in the case of a suicide mission. We don't know how to say goodbye to people because we've been doing it so much lately that now that it feels like it could be real, and now that the writers feel like this could be real, this could really be the end, we just don't know what to say. We don't know what how can we put a cap on this whole relationship? And so a lot of John's speeches to his father are like, well, if you're hearing this, I'm dead. No, that's stupid. That's cheesy. Yeah. And oh, well, if you're hearing this, I had a crazy time. And it's like, no, that's dumb. He just has to keep re-editing himself until he finally finds the words, which is another recurring thing in this whole episode.
And then Aaron walks in on him recording this.
With an itty-bitty waist. The girl walks in your face and he gets surprised.
Aaron, what are you doing here? And their interactions in this episode were oddly restrained. I don't know if you felt that too.
I'm confused by their relationship lately because I feel like it built up so well for a while, and then lately it's been whenever they're together, there's this sort of tension, which in a regular TV show wouldn't happen. There's more often a linear arc of we like each other, then we flirt, and then we had an episode where we had sex, and now things are awkward, but now things are fine. Yeah. Whereas in this, it's because they're adults. Sorry, that was weirdly pronounced. And they, got physically intimate with each other. Now it's well, we can't just make that our whole thing. We still have to talk to each other we're still just co-pilots at some point. Yeah. Or, we're both on this adventure. Right. We can't just be oh, I love you, baby, kisses and stuff. There has to be a certain amount of distance for us to have an adult conversation.
Yeah, there has to be some distance, but it also feels like they're imposing distance a little bit.
I think they are, though.
Yeah. And they're gonna die possibly, and they seem just
that's a bummer.
I don't know. They seem it's cool the restraint that they have, but it's also odd.
Sorry, I really wanted these gummy worms.
Yeah, you did. You just felt like tanking the whole operation for gummy worms.
I'm done.
I wasn't actually mad at it.
There's going to be a lot of muting in this episode, I promise.
Great. So I can have my gummy worms then.
Wait, what? Great Foley work. Great. Such good Foley work.
Thanks, man. So they talk, Aaron and John. And Aaron tells him a little bit about her parents, which is very cool. And there's a great...
Oh, that was actually really interesting.
There's a great moment of facial acting from Ben Browder with Aaron's like, yeah, when I was a kid, I was lying in bed and a soldier appeared above me. And he's like, cool, your father. And she says, my mother. And then he kind of
he's like,
looks down wide-eyed, waiting for it to pass over.
So delightfully awkward.
That was a great moment.
Yeah.
And then she talks about how, I guess usually the way that peacekeepers work, or the way that Sebaceans work, is they breed just because you need to breed, and so you just do it as a kind of mechanical, biological thing. But Aaron is the child of a love relationship.
I was touched by this scene, and it's weird because it's kind of world building through telling, like a very common sort of mantra in television writing is show, don't tell, which basically just means like if you're gonna give us backstory, instead of dropping exposition on us, you should suggest it and make us and kind of let the viewer fill in the blanks. And this scene is basically her telling, not showing, to John Crichton and being like, hey, here's how things work, but she's doing it in the context of like telling him a story about her life and like opening up to him emotionally. So this isn't something you would have found in like a wiki or like I looked up Sebaceans on the Farscape website and they told us this interesting thing. This is something that you would only learn if you knew one of them, or if you were like really familiarized with a Sebacean. And so her telling him that is actually like a really emotional moment of like, you the viewer and you, John Crichton, are so used to hearing stories of like, oh, people fall in love and then they have kids. But we've established before that peacekeepers are and Sebaceans are like a military race, and that they don't do stuff like that. Like love, the way that John Crichton thinks of it, doesn't exist in Farscape land. So for him to hear that story, it like completely reframes the way he thinks about Aaron.
Yeah,
because she has never seen like the person that would be, other than when they're together, like when she's in the group or when she's on missions, she's not very like vulnerable or emotional. But her entire existence is predicated on two people being vulnerable and emotional amongst a landscape of seriousness and forced breeding.
Yeah, I agree. I think I was saying that their interactions in this episode are restrained, but just the fact that she's talking about her parents to him in such a candid and relaxed manner shows a lot about their relationship at this point and the level of trust and respect that they have for one another. So I think learning this information is enough to kind of make up for how just terse they are in their interactions. And then you get the great moment as the capper of the scene where John suggests that she leave her father a message on his voice recorder. And he says, you never know, he might get it. Which is really nice.
Yeah.
Then we go back into Crace's room. Crace is like drowning Rigel, which I wrote is not super believable. We've had problems before with Rigel being injured and not buying it. Because it doesn't look like he needs to breathe.
Yeah, and I said the same thing. I said it must have been really fun to drown a puppet.
Yeah. Into
fake resistance, like he's trying to fight back, but he's still just a puppet. So it's actually an awkward scene. It doesn't work as well as it should.
I wrote, we need more wide shots of Pilot's room because it looks really impressive, and we don't see it from a bird's eye view very often, but we get a brief, like 2-second full room shot of it in this episode.
Of what again?
Pilot's room, Pilot Land,
yes,
Pilot Town. Whatever we're calling it.
Well, my headphones fell out. That's why I was
Gotcha.
like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Then the most fun development of the episode, I think, is what happens next, where Rigel agrees to offer Crais asylum aboard Moya.
I got so excited and then immediately shut down.
You got shut down?
Well, I was really excited because I was like, is this it? Is Crais going to join the team? Join the team. Scorpius is the bad guy. Crais is on our team. Please, just make it happen. And then he gets on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an amazing scene.
Wonderful line from John Crichton. He goes, ha ha ha, my boy Crais.
Yeah. Well, that's a scene. That's a line that you get to say when you have 18 guns pointed at the guy who's been ruining your life.
Right.
So basically, once he's on the ship, everybody gets to just play with, like, this guy's been the villain in our lives for so long. Fuck this guy. Oh my god, we get to do whatever we want. This is the best. Like, they just get to have fun.
And we get reminded, the way that we were reminded by the scene where Crais was in the Aurora chair and Aaron comes in and tells him that he's going to watch his life, we get reminded that he's ruined all of their lives, not just John Crichton's. And he's been ruining their lives since before John Crichton showed up.
That's a good point.
Because Dargo, we learn, knew that Crais knew that he was innocent. And Crais didn't do anything about it because he's like, you need a committee vote to whatever, to let somebody free. But he knew that he was incarcerating an innocent man.
Yeah.
And so Dargo gets back at him. Crais says, as you can see, I'm unarmed. And Dargo hands his Qualta blade off to John and says, as you can see, I'm also unarmed. And then punches him and knees him in the groin.
Dargo without his Qualta blade is a sight to behold.
Mm-hmm. Somebody at some point says, if life was fair, you'd be dead. I foolishly did not write who said that.
It was definitely someone saying it to Crais.
Yeah. I think it was John saying it to Crais.
Probably.
Oh, you know what it was? Yeah. And John was like holding a gun up to him. And then it rack focuses to the barrel of the gun.
Facing Crais.
Yeah, which you're like, what, he's going to shoot him? And it cuts to commercial and no, he's not. I thought that was it.
The show still hasn't grown out of its awkward commercial cuts yet.
Yeah, I think that was just an interesting directorial choice, though, of being like, well,
yeah,
if he was going to shoot him, this is how we would shoot the scene. But he's not.
This is where it would happen, but no. Crane's way too cool.
Yeah. I also wanted Crais to be their buddy, but alas.
Alas. Super duper alas.
Such things do not usually happen. We get a scene between Dargo and Aaron where they are...
one of the best.
I didn't like it, actually.
Uh-oh. Well, we're going to fight about it.
Actually, you know what it was? I didn't like it at first, but then it had like a couple lines that I enjoyed. So they are loading explosives onto a pod. I don't know if they had devised their plan by this point or not, but their plan eventually becomes that they're going to pilot this pod full of explosives. I think at first they're thinking that they're going to fly it into the bridge of the Peacekeeper ship.
And then Crais is like, okay, so here's the thing, because this is kind of what the whole back half of the episode is them talking about the plan and then executing it. Interspersed with some more character bits. I was confused about the plan for a little bit.
Yeah.
Which may just be because I'm bad at picking up on a lot of plot details all the time. But it's also like, it keeps changing. Because, yeah, they come up with something, and then Crais goes, hey, as an expert on the ship that you're about to try and destroy or whatever, I can tell you that's not going to work. Here's why. And then they're like, how about this? And he's like, that's not going to work either. Here's why. So the first one is like, oh, we're going to crash it straight into the ship. And he's like, no, they have long-range sensors. You'll be dead way before you get anywhere close to it. And then I think they say, we're going to drop it onto the planet. Is that what it is?
I don't know what all their interim ones are, but the plan they eventually come up with is they are going to fly the explosives into the planet where the Gamek base is, because the planet is covered in oil, apparently.
What a cool detail.
And that's going to set it on fire. And their thinking is that Scorpius is going to have to turn around and follow this thing because he can't let his base get blown up.
Oh yeah, and then so they're like, that's it, we did it.
But then it's like, no, he would be able to tell if that's what you're doing, based on the fact that the ship would be heavier and they would shoot it out of the sky. And so then they come to the conclusion of, oh, if we put John in there, he won't blow it up because he really wants John's wormhole secrets.
Well, that's the conclusion where they come up with the final one, is they're like, oh, this works. And he goes, no, he is actually fine with the gamma base. It's almost expendable. The only thing that he's truly not going to allow to go away is John Crichton.
Right.
Because he needs his brain. He's willing to let his whole entire planet blow up and let millions of people die if it means he can get this sweet boy's delicious brain. See it last.
Yeah, so we'll get into how that all shakes out after we talk about a couple more combo scenes here. So the Dargo Aaron scene. I don't know. Just the writing felt off.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember exactly why. I think they were kind of coming at each other like, I don't really like you very much or something like that. But they're like best buds at this point. Dargo was by her bedside when she was dying. They are so close, and it was initially written as them not. It didn't feel like they were as close as they were, I guess. But you liked this scene a lot.
I did?
That's what you said.
Shit. Yeah, I like that I like their relationship more than I like this scene.
There are a couple fun things that they say. Dargo entrusts Aaron to deliver something to his son, some information.
No, yeah. That was weird. That's a different scene.
That's a different scene?
Is it? Are you not thinking of the scene where he gives her the hologram?
I think this is the scene that I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a scene where it's him and Crichton are literally like seconds away from leaving, and he goes, by the way, take this, and it's the hologram of my wife and my kid. Also, tell my kid to like grow up. He's gonna grow up strong, and make sure he does. Because I know he does, but make sure he knows that his dad loved him. Blah 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 blah. It's a really sad scene, and it's a really potent scene for Dargo, but it also happens in like the span of 2 seconds.
Well, but okay, then I guess I have this line written down that they must have been talking about his son in another context then. Because they talk about what his son looks like, I guess. And they're like, I think Aaron's like, I bet he's going to look like you. And then Dargo says, hopefully his mother's nose. So I just like that Dargo is aware that he has a gross nose. And then they have that exchange. Dargo says, I thought I'd live much longer. And Aaron says, I never thought I'd live this long. Or maybe that's flopped. No, it's not flopped. One of them says one of those, and the other one says the other one. I don't remember a lot of things.
Ever at all. I think you got that right, though.
Then we have a scene of Crace and John talking to each other. Crace is in the cell, and John's talking to him while he's in there. And
is that the scene where he cries?
I think so. The thing that I remember about it is John was craving a human male-to-male conversation.
Oh yeah, that was the whole gist
about cars and football and stuff.
Well, he says like it's kind of mumbly at first. It's the way that he always starts his conversations, is he mumbles and then goes into like full Ben Browder acting mode. He's like, every time I've been on the ship, I haven't been able to have another human to human male interaction. And you're like, gay porn? Is that what we're setting up for? All right, I'm ready for this. And then he's like, yeah, so we can talk about like man stuff, like just cars and girls and that kind of stuff. And he's like, I figure you're close enough, but also I hate you, and also we can't have those conversations because we don't live remotely similar lives, and I hate you. And he cries.
And then they also have that beautiful thought of John asking if Crace thinks it's an accident that their races look so similar. Or Crace asks that. And
yes.
They say that is a mystery that they're going to miss exploring.
Oh.
And that's cool, because that's another instance of this show not taking its easy contrivances for granted. Because in another show, like, oh, humans look like Sebastians. Okay, let's move on. We're not going to talk about that ever again. But this show,
here they're like, that's
the
weird.
Characters are curious about it, and it's used as a plot point quite often. So then they have their big conversation, about how they're going to attack. And they realize that Crichton has to go into the thing. Then this part confuses me a little bit. They cut to Dargo's really upset because he drew the short straw, but he's like adamantly saying that he's going to go and he's got to do it. But yes. Why did Dargo have to be there? It really only had to be John in the pod.
I thought it was in case one of them died.
From what though?
Because they're going to get shot into space.
That doesn't make any sense.
I have no idea. This is exactly what confused me. This is why was there two of them? How are they in a pod? I felt so stupid watching this episode because there was so much dramatic, like the last couple minutes of the episode where they're all like, "Oh my god, it worked" or "didn't work," and I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be sad because everyone's sad, but I don't know why. Who's dead? Who's alive?
Yeah.
It frustrated me a lot.
The thing that I understood about it is that John had to be there because he was the only reason that Scorpius wouldn't just shoot the pod out of the sky right away.
Right.
But then I didn't get why Dargo had to be there. Maybe they said there had to be two people, but I thought they said there only had to be one. I don't know. Anyway, the fact of the matter is John, Dargo, both going on this pod on essentially a suicide mission to save everybody else.
Yeah.
That's what we want to know at this point. Then we get an interaction between Chiana and Crichton.
Great
which,
scene.
Again, very nice scene. And she's basically trying to put the moves on him.
Like, desperately. It's kind of sad.
It's very sad, because that's the only way that she can think of to thank him for saving her life on more than one occasion at this point.
You know, it kind of reframes the scene when they were both on the Gamma base, and she's, like, using her sexual wiles to make her way across the base. And she's, like, very sexually confident in that scene, but then you kind of realize that, like, the two major scenes with Sean in this episode are the one where she says, "I don't want to be imprisoned again," and that's really sad because she spent so much of her pre-Farscape time imprisoned. But then also, even though she has this, like, sexual confidence, it's also the only way she knows how to be familiar with other men.
Yeah,
basically.
It's her method of self-empowerment is also in itself kind of a prison,
because she's just playing into her own gender role and just trapped by it in a way. Like, this is all I do.
Like that to her, she thinks that's her only leverage. Right. And this is a show about, it's a show about communication. It's a show about going home. And it's also a show about discovering that, as John said to Aaron in the pilot, you can be more. And that's been a big part of Aaron's character arc, is her thinking that she's just a soldier and that's the way that she has to think and operate in the world, and finding out that no, she can be emotional, she can be intellectual, she can be all sorts of different things. And so I think that an element of that may be in how Chiana's going to develop, which we kind of see in this episode in a very symbolic fashion, because her resort, the thing that she decides to do after trying to sleep with John and him basically not wanting to do that, is she decides to cook everyone a nice big meal as thanks.
More gender roles.
Well, I guess I don't think it's necessarily... Are you saying that in a bad way?
No.
Okay. I think it's just that's how she's thanking people. Like, anybody can thank people with a big feast.
Right.
I don't know. John Crichton's frat boy nature bothered me a little bit in this interaction, where he's like, you never have sex before the big game. I'm a football star. Blah, blah, blah.
This is the scene where you with him and Gianna, right? Yeah, that was weird.
Okay, well, I guess. And then he has a nice line that redeems it, though. She says, "You saved my life." And he says, "Pass it on. When someone else needs it, return the favor."
Oh.
Yeah.
I hope that comes back. It doesn't have to, because it's just a nice thing to say, but I also hope it comes back.
Mm-hmm. I really like that scene.
Well shot.
Yeah.
Lots of just... Because, I mean, two-person conversations are not easy to shoot, but it makes sense the way that most directors do them. It's just, two faces in a space. It's like cinematographically simple, but they're always just well framed in this episode. And there's even an earlier scene, like right when Christ comes onto Moya and everyone has their guns pointed at him. I really want to... I might actually find a screenshot of the scene and either make it the thumbnail or just keep it as like a desktop background. But they're all framed perfectly. It's like the five of them. It's, Dargo, Aaron, Zahn, John, and I think also Chiana. Mm-hmm. And oh my god, I got all the names right. And they're all just like lined up diagonally, and it reminds me, it's such a perfect, like, oh, we're all in this together shot. Like, it's a shot that conveys meaning, which I think is really smart. And it reminded me of, weirdly, the scene from Twin Peaks where all the guys are gonna like go do the raid on the like illegal gambling den or whatever. Uh-huh. And it's like the three of them or the four of them, where it's like Hawk and Cooper and Doc and the last guy.
You're doing so well with names.
I know, it's hard. Wait, Truman. There you go. 10 points to Gryffindor. I just love. But what I'm saying is, I love those those multi-person action shots, and this episode was filled with them.
Yeah. After the John Chiana scene, we cut back to the Peacekeeper ship where Scorpius is talking to Lieutenant Bracca. I had to look up his name. Bracca. And Bracca tells him that Crais has been declared irreversibly contaminated, as Aaron was at the beginning of the show. And so Scorpius is in control of the vessel, officially, fully. And Scorpius alludes to the fact that, like, hey, Lieutenant, if you stick with me, you're gonna go places, is the implication there.
It's like, really?
Yeah. And apparently that guy is gonna be like a recurring character, which baffles me because he was like the most
he feels so nothing in these episodes.
Yeah, just the most forgettable, grunty second in command guy.
That's Scorpius's bonus power. That's his daily cooldown power, or whatever they're called in D&D.
Is that he gets a cool sidekick?
Yeah, well, he gets a cool sidekick, but he also can turn any generic side character into an essential character.
Right.
He gets to do it once a day, or once a season, I guess.
So I hope Lieutenant Bracca becomes more interesting.
I think he will.
Probably. Then we get a scene where Crais and Aaron are on Moya's child, which I talked about a bit ago. Crais talking about the reasoning behind why they built it the way they did. And I think Crais alludes to the fact of they could just leave together on this ship. Like, hey, you and me, we could get out of here. Mm-hmm. And she is not happy with that idea.
She ain't into that.
Yeah. Then we have a scene between John and Rigel, which is cute.
Yeah, we've run the gamut at this point for pairings, so...
Well, yeah, mostly. I think this may be the last big pairing that they show us.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at.
And John entrusts all of his possessions to Rigel. Rigel says that he can be selfish, but please don't hold that against him. So they have a cute little moment between the two of them. Then we have Chiana giving them the feast.
You missed something extremely important.
Did I?
Terry's sighting at 32 minutes and 50 seconds. Go find it right before the feast scene. Terry, the silk cloth in Rigel's room, the most important character on Farscape. Can't wait till he comes back in season 2. Woo!
Good. Then, after they feast, it's time for John and Dargo to set out on their mission. And again, this is emblematic of the weird nature of John and Aaron in this episode. As he's on his way out, one of them... I wish I had attributed these to people. But they basically say the same thing to each other, so I guess it doesn't matter. John says, we'll just say John says it, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. He says, I wasn't going to say goodbye. And then Aaron says, neither was I. And then they kind of give each other a nod and then walk away.
Yeah, it's so weirdly terse.
But it's terse in a way of like, they're saying that they wouldn't be able to say goodbye.
Right.
Like if they let that guard down even a minute, then the floodgates would open and they wouldn't be able to handle this situation.
Yeah.
Which I think is beautiful. Then we've got John and Dargo going up, and it becomes more of a tense sequence, cutting back and forth between John and Dargo preparing their shuttle to collide with the planet, and Scorpius being notified of exactly what's going on. And he's like, "Oh, they outsmarted me. I'm so mad." I think he uses his deep voice somewhere in there.
Correct.
They have an exchange. John asks Dargo how he's doing. Dargo says that he needs to pee.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a cute exchange. At some point in here, we learn that Erin has named Moya's child after her father. She's named it Talyn, and that's spelled Talyn. And yeah, that's heartwarming.
I loved that scene.
Yeah.
This is the point where basically every emotional scene had me like re-crying, pretty much.
Then we get my favorite 2-line exchange in the whole episode.
I might have written this one down, but you go.
Did you?
Is it Crichton and Dargo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe I guess it's best explained in 3 lines. So it's a 3-line exchange. They're about to collide and blow things up. Mm-hmm. And John says, "Hey, Dargo, how come I'm not afraid?" And Dargo says, "Fear accompanies the possibility of death. Calm shepherds its certainty." And then John says, "Love hanging with you, man."
That's everything. That's encapsulated. It's everything. It's perfection.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty
That
great.
is the line I have. Well, isn't there also a line where Crichton says, "I'm alive, aren't I?"
I don't remember. Maybe.
Oh, God. That was the line.
That was really great. Then they make it there, and they blow up the Gamma base.
Yeah, we did it.
And they set the whole planet on fire.
Easy.
Yeah, cool. Some of the effects are pretty dumb, but conceptually that's way cool that they set a whole planet on fire. Then we kind of get into the weird ending moments of this episode.
Alright, yeah.
So John celebrates what they did by saying, "Hey, you bastards, John Crichton was here." It's a nice line.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, another John Crichton line that we forgot to mention. When he's talking to his dad again, he signs off by saying, "This is John Crichton somewhere in the universe," which shows up in the background information, which is why I didn't bring it up.
Yes.
But that was a great line. John and Dargo are floating out in space outside of in orbit of the Gamma base planet. John has a spacesuit on. Dargo does not. I guess he doesn't need one.
Remember the episode where he got shot into space and they were like, "Oh, Luxons can survive a couple of 7 minutes in space."
You're right. But he's freezing.
Yeah.
He's getting cold.
Yes.
He doesn't have a lot of time. And they figure that the way that this can work is Erin can go in a prowler and save them, and then everybody can escape. But unfortunately, as she's kind of stuck having to mimic the flight maneuvers of other prowlers in the area, otherwise they'll know that she's a fake. And so she's kind of just flying around. She can't really get to them. Dargo's slowly dying. And Scorpius turns around and sets his sights anew on Moya. So they're like, "Well, you guys should get out of here, otherwise he's going to kill you." But, Alan, there's a problem.
Oh, my God.
Moya doesn't want to leave.
Aww.
You know why she doesn't want to leave?
Why is that?
Well, it's because Crace flew off in Talyn.
What?
Yeah, he stole it.
Shut up.
Yeah, and Moya is like, "I can't leave my kid."
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and so then we get the final pairing of the episode. It's John and Moya. And he's like, "Moya, listen, if you want to save your kid, you have to not die. So, thank you so much.
You don't have to starburst, girlfriend. Love you.
I love you. You're great. Thank you. Bye-bye." And then she does. She starbursts away.
There's like a whole minute of like, "No, we can't. You have to. But we can't. You have to." Okay.
And then Dargo falls unconscious.
Yep.
And he lets go of the good luck charm that John Crichton gave him. And then the episode is over. And imagine if that was the series finale.
No.
Just picture how you would have felt.
And then fade to...
Yeah. Oh, man.
Even thinking about it again makes me sad. And I didn't get a chance to talk about it, but the scene where Christ takes Talon, names, is really great. Because that's the scene where you're like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, I'm getting out of here. I'm saving my own skin. And then they're like, dude, you're taking a child from his mother. And he's like, hey, guys, that's what happened to me.
Well, he says to Aaron, that's what happened to us.
Yeah, well, yeah, even more.
Both of them.
He says both. He says, that's what happened to me. That's what happened to you. That's our thing.
Yeah.
And that was also the scene where he sounded exactly like Pilot.
Gotcha.
So, if you're interested in finding that. This show's done. There's no more show.
It's all over.
They didn't make any more episodes. What's the background information?
I'll tell you. So the final shot of the season with the burning planet was something that David Kemper wanted to do pretty early on, and he had to fight to get it in. The concept.
It's a pretty big effect. They were running out of CG budget.
Yeah. I think it's good, though. I think it was a good choice.
Absolutely.
They didn't necessarily execute it as well as they could have, but conceptually it's very rad. The final... I think the last shot that they filmed was that shot of Dargo letting go of the good luck charm. And so they had like the whole crew and everybody who worked on the show watched that super simple shot. And then when it was over, it's like, woohoo! Show's over.
Probably some crying.
Ben Browder notes that the final line John Crichton recorded for his father was originally written for the pilot episode. This is John Crichton somewhere in the universe line. But they didn't use it in the pilot episode. So he asked for it to be reinserted into this episode.
Worth it.
Yes. Smart choice on Ben Browder's part. Rock has abandoned talking about how it's not a very action-packed episode, which is true. It is crazy dialogue heavy. And we enjoyed that. Yeah, so there's talk about the fact they didn't know it was renewed for a second season. But they kind of... They had a sense that they had a good chance at it. Because they didn't have high numbers in an absolute sense. But they had higher numbers than other stuff on Sci-Fi Channel. So there was a possibility. But...
Was Stargate before the show or after?
Stargate was...
It was before.
Aren't there multiple Stargate shows?
SG-1.
I just know that Ben Browder and Claudia Black eventually go over to that show.
Okay.
For like a few seasons. But I don't know if it was running at the same time or what. That's one of those shows. That's one of those shows that's like 10 seasons long, though, isn't it?
Maybe?
It ran from 1997 to 2007.
Okay. Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I think they were on like the last 3 seasons or something.
Sure.
Something like that. Anyway. There's not a ton of other stuff that's interesting. This is the last episode where John Eccleston is Rigel's puppeteer. Rigel gets a new puppeteer.
But the voice is still the same, right?
Yeah, the voice is the same.
Oh, yeah, we should say there's like way more to this show. I was joking about like this is the end. That obviously they got picked up.
Yeah, I think people know.
Yeah, it's 4 seasons.
I think they know.
Good.
Yeah, so that's Farscape Season 1 closed out like that.
Whew, put a bow on it.
Put a bow on it.
What did you think, John? Wait, don't tell me. Tell me next week.
Oh, next week we're going to have a special just Season 1 recap, talk about it episode.
It's an overview.
Yeah, it's just an overview. I don't know how much.
Yeah.
Just kind of taking a breather in between seasons, letting it sit for a bit.
It's the closest that we can do in this modern age of binge watching television to waiting. Because we're not going to wait a year. Good God, no. I can't. No. I need more. So, yes, next week, we're going to be talking about Season 1 in general, what we thought at the beginning of the show, where it went, what happened overall.
Highlights, lowlights.
Favorites, worst parts. best Terry appearances. We might have some awards for the show. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Are you excited, John?
I'm excited, yes.
Yeah, so stay tuned for next week's ScapeChatz, the Season 1 recap episode. And thank you for listening. If you'd like to email us questions or comments, you can do that at ScapeChatz@gmail.com. That's SCAPCHATZ, because we do love Z's here at ScapeChatz. And yeah, send those, and we're online, and that's fun. And just, hey, if you're listening to this, you're awesome. I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
You're really cool. You're like way cooler than most of your friends.
You
and
watch
don't let them know that.
Farscape.
Yeah, you just watch the whole... You also... Yeah, don't... This is not one of those podcasts you should listen to. You know how sometimes people listen to rewatch podcasts without watching the show?
That would be crazy for this show.
Bad people. Yeah, this would be the most boring garbage if you did that. Because at least you get a good show to go along with this silliness. Not that we're boring garbage. I think this is great. I think we're doing good work. We're cool, okay? I really think we're just
get
doing
us
fun.
out of here.
I'm scared, Magellan. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go yet. I want to be with these people forever and tell them stories and share anecdotes. And hey, guys, listen.
Would it help?
We'll
see
you.
Oh, you're just gonna go into it.
Yeah. But we will see you next week in space. Magellan, do it with me. Do the whoosh with me. Come on. Yes, he did it! Oh my god, it took a whole season. Bye, guys. Love you. Bye.
It's like them learning that I was a plant this whole time. I'm made of rocks. That's my thing. I'm a living rock.